everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Jumbo Josh, and we are back with another Twitter thread. Today we're talking about powerful cards. There's about 11,000 legal cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, and a lot of them are actually good. That said, decks can only have 40 cards individually, and with a whole bunch of 3-ofs, there's probably only about a pool of about 1,000 cards total that individuals are willing to play. As a result, a lot of extremely powerful cards never see any play at all. Today we're going to be looking at some of those, and I've begun with a card that I am dumbfounded never saw any sort of success, Titano Cider. But first, I got merch. Looking to dress to impress for your locals? The fine folks at Pyramid and I have worked tirelessly to actualize real designs cooked up by the MBT chat. Wait, where are you going? If you watch the subathon, you know that we designed about a dozen shirts of all time on stream, and a few of them are now available for purchase. We've got the Broke Boy Dueling Club tee, the Chainlink 6 tee, the Reborn Toad tee. And for those of you that like Yu-Gi-Oh! Merch but want to be able to wear it outside without dying of embarrassment, we've got the Reborn Toad embroidered hoodie as well. Pyramid uses high-quality material for all of their merch, so it's built to last even when you're taking a beating at locals. Their main street tees use a thick polycotton blend that's as comfy as it is durable. These will be up for pre-order for a couple more days, and then they are gone forever. Until September, when we'll be doing a back-to-school line with more designs from the stream. But if you want to be the first to grab them, this is your chance. Links in the description. Now back to the video. This is a trap card that can target a face-up monster your opponent controls that was special summoned from the extra deck, change its attack to 0, and if you do, negate its effects. If your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck while it's in the graveyard, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can set this card. It's almost a strictly better Lost Wind, but for some reason, it never saw the success that Lost Wind did. It's just a little bit too slow and a little too low of a payoff during a time when trap cards basically have to read you win the game, if you even consider them. So let's see what you all came up with. Lazy says, I'm extremely fond of Tiamaton's design as a card. It saw some very niche play on release, though in practice the card never had a true place to call home. Locking a whole column is potentially nuts as well. You could lock out the EMZ, but it's just not accessible enough. On release, this card was expected to be extremely powerful. It's very easy to set up its condition, having 3 or more cards in the same column. You don't have to summon to the column in which there are 3 or more cards, and being able to lock out an opponent's EMZ after setting up yourself does sound extremely powerful, but in practice, it was a lot less powerful when it was stapled to a monster. Spenstar has a pretty good point. Post-errata Firewall Dragon. He's still got the sauce. It's a multi-bounce, it's extension, it's a generic Link 4. I don't know why no one put it in their end board since it got the errata. I would have to agree. I think it has to be a very specific deck that takes advantage of it, something like Code Talker, but unfortunately that deck isn't particularly powerful. I can imagine a conceivable Cyburst deck in the future that would integrate this as part of their end board, but for now, yeah, it sees absolutely zero play in anything. Warning point, a perfect example. When a monster is summoned, that turn face-up monster cannot attack. Its effects are negated. It can't be used as material for a fusion, synchro, or link summon. This one has some really weird timing issues that are frustrating, but importantly is still very powerful. In fact, this is the most played trap in Duel Links right now. And Blizzard is such a weird one. Everyone always theories out this card as extremely powerful, and it did see a ton of play in Broke Boy format. Target a face-up spell your opponent controls. This turn, negate the activated effects of that spell and all spells on the field with the same original name. If the targeted card would be sent to the opponent's graveyard this turn, it is added to their hand instead. This has a lot of good interactions against very specific spells, but in practice it's just a little more narrow than it would need to be to see considerable play. I always think this about Penalty Game. Great post Scarlon. One of the very few times I'll say that. When your opponent has 4 cards in their hand, activate one of these effects. Your opponent can't draw during their next draw phase, or your opponent cannot activate spell traps this turn. It's like an EEV that does both, and also all they need is to have 4 cards. So you just wait for them to play 1 or 2 and fire it off. Giant Skyhawk says there are a ton of normal trap cards that fit this bill. Seems like a hard design space to make well. Get Out is a perfect example. Target 2 monsters your opponent controls that were special summoned from the extra deck, shuffle them into the deck. I mean, that's incredible. That's like super crazy. Ava says, this may change post-Dune, but I can't believe Geist received a card as solid as Pook, and yet it hardly did anything. Yeah, Doug was talking about how this could theoretically revitalize Geist, transform it into a link climbing build, and unfortunately, none of that ever manifested. I wish I was dead with maybe the best answer in the thread. For me, it's always going to be this card, released days before Duelist Alliance. Had this been in any previous format, it would have been a format warper. If you released Supply Squad 6 months earlier, we would think about it the way we think about Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning. It is an incredibly powerful card in any game in which you are fighting for pluses. Kai says, I think Underdog deserves a shout. Yeah, when this came out, I know a lot of people were hyped about it. It was a one-sided skill drain depending on whose turn it was, a prime mechanic to try and exploit. However, it really never found a good home for any deck to really take advantage of it. I could see Underdog being a card like Tyrant's Throws, where conceivably there's a deck that will come out in the next couple of years that will be able to make use of it, but for the moment it is really not exciting. This card was meant to beat Dragoon. It was a TCG exclusive. It says send a monster your opponent controls that was special summoned from the extra deck to the graveyard, then your opponent gains life points equal to the original attack or defense of that monster. Just an all-around great removal spell. A couple of decades too late for removal spells to matter. Rush Duel 1. Pot of Greed would seem like it'd see a lot of play in your Rush Duel deck. Well, no, as you'll 99% of the time prefer Dark Hole or Graceful Charity to this thing. That's because Rush Duel operates on a different axis. You draw up to 5 cards every turn, and one of the worst possible things that can happen to you in Rush Duel is you get caught on too many cards in hand at the end of your turn. You want to be drawing like as many as you can every single turn, so a card that draws you more cards and potentially turns off the ability to draw next turn is really bad, especially when discarding is so valuable and Graceful Charity exists in this format. Heavenly Zephyr Miradora is a weird one. It's like an effect veiler that's also a body on board. The problem with it is that it has a really ridiculous activation requirement, but Konami thought that people were going to play this. Like, this has a Starlight. Correct. Yeah, Armed Dragon Flash was kind of expected to be quick launches 4, 5, and 6 for Dragon Link at release, but people just decided they didn't want to do it. They said, no, the difference between getting a Rocket Tracer and getting an Armed Dragon level 3 is too ridiculous. I want Pisty, but I don't want it that bad. Definitely Zealantis. Everyone at local saw the 1+ effect monster material cost and lost their minds. I guess it does see a fair amount of play right now in Marincess, which is like the 10th best deck, in which it has a really weird interaction where you get waterlocked and then activate its effect, and then you can't special summon back the monsters that you've banished. But everyone expected this was just going to be an auto-include in every single deck. They'd be like, no, you're going to go access code, then Zealantis. And it's like, you're telling me the board isn't going to be clear after we make access code? I think this card's lack of tops has nothing to do with the card. I think the card's incredibly powerful in a vacuum. I think Tri-Brigade is just too weak. This is a Jesse Cotton innovation, and he bears full responsibility for this, but GCD is completely right. When my opponent goes for Hulk, I will use this and summon out the Water Barrier statue, and other statements streamed up by the utterly deranged. Draco Utopian Aura was a really cool card that I was excited to see play. When your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, negate the activation, destroy the card, then you can banish a monster from your hand, and if you do, special the monster that was destroyed, but negate its effects. It was like a solemn strike that maybe also plussed you by filtering a bad card from your hand into a cool card from your opponent's side of the field. On paper, it sounded good, but in paper, it was kind of middling. We already have 3 strike and 3 judgment available. Why would you want to play the 9th negation counter trap? And the little bonus effect, unfortunately, just doesn't come up enough to warrant playing it over one of the more flexible solemn cards. Assault Synchron was expected to be like immediately playable in a ton of decks. But it's not. And that's because we are missing exactly Chaotic Ruler, which makes it a lot harder to access the combo lines that this card enables. That said, I do think it will find a home. People are tinkering with it in Dragon Link, and it's probably good somewhere. I mean, this is a lot of power to have in one individual card. When this card was first revealed, I was afraid that people were going to try to force it into a bunch of different decks. It's basically Vanity's Emptiness, but completely one-sided. Unfortunately, I think there probably will be a home for it in the future. I think the OCG is tinkering with something now. I just hope that we never figure it out. Borreload Riot Dragon. I think Skyhawk is tinkering with this. When your opponent special summons a monster, quick effect, negate the special summon, destroy that monster, then destroy this card or a rocket monster you control. If it's in your graveyard, you can target a Boral or a rocket monster, destroy a card you control or in your hand, add that target to your hand. I mean, it's just an incredible extender for decks that want to destroy things. It's interruption. It's really strong, but it's blue. Yeah, this is a strange one. I remember when this card came out, people were like, oh yeah, so there's the Ghost Girls and then there's like the off Ghost Girls that are like the kind of bad hand traps, and this is one of those. Red Blossoms from Underroot. If this card is in your hand, you can target a spell trap in each graveyard, banish them, then special summon this card. You contribute it to target a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link in either graveyard, banish it, and if you do, special summon a monster from your graveyard with a different monster card type from that target. This card's like, okay, but unfortunately it requires a very specific set of decks to be playable in order to hit the sweet spot, and we have not seen it yet. I would love to see this card get played. Made to order Mermaid Outfit Outfitter says, target a card in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, then add 1 card from your deck to your hand with the same name as that banished card. It's like a really good tool for interrupting an opponent and being able to plus and just winning the game in the mirror. I gotta say, I finally see why we are so terrible at assessing which cards are going to be good and bad upon first read. It's because many of you can't read at all. Just look at the answers to the prompt. I mean, there's just no way people think this, right? This card saw months of play. You all seen seals before? Where are these people coming from? No. This card sees a ton of play in like the 4th best deck. Libro has double digits of tops. I am begging you. Phantasme has a really decent effect and saw play in meta on release. Then why is it in the thread? Ain't no way! Joven, answer a completely different question. I wish these had been released later. Didn't ask you that. I asked you which ones didn't see any play. Not which ones were released too early, not which ones were released too late. This is a different... Get out of the thread. Go to a different... Make your own thread. You don't need to be in here. How? Going the opposite direction. Out of the thread!